You are back. You are normal. This is the Your Normal podcast, and I'm your host, Blake Russell. This is the podcast where normal people speak about the usually unspoken. And mad shout out to Kevin Norris for the last episode. Thanks for coming on, sharing your story. Again, it's such a remarkable situation that Kevin underwent and continues to openly speak about. And wonderful person. Thanks for coming on, Kevin. It was a really good episode. This week, I have a special individual. This is somebody that, he told me before when we were talking for this podcast that he was a better basketball player than me. And I just wanted to get ahead of that straight out of the gate. Not a better basketball player than me. I think that if we played one-on-one 20 times, I'd win 19 of them. But I'll let him have a chance to defend himself. He's also like a self-proclaimed can't win Ferg. That's the name of his fantasy football team. We're in a fantasy football league together. He's never won, can't win. I feel like if you're going to name yourself Can't Win Ferg, you're just asking for it. So, guys, I appreciate everybody being here. This person's a wonderful person, and we have a lot to talk about today. Josh Ferguson. Josh, would you please introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be on the cast with you. So my name's Josh Ferguson. I have lived in Jeff City my whole life. Really Holt Summit is where I grew up. Born in Jeff City. Went to school with Blake, and I'm just super excited to be on the cast. I work at the YMCA. It is a fun job. Work with the kids there. I've been a part of that for a while. About 13 years is how long I've been there. So super enjoy building relationships with the kids, community, and being impactful to those around me is my goal. So.
Yeah, Josh, I appreciate you coming on. And with your work specifically at the YMCA, what's your job title there?
So I'm the assistant school-age child care director.
That's a full sentence.
So long. Yeah. So, yeah. In the short, it's just putting out fires all day long.
Okay. I know those kind of roles. But I remember there was a period back when I was living in Jefferson City over the summer. I worked one of the camps, and I remember watching you work, and I was like, this is Josh's like forte. Like, this is what he does well. Like, the kids love you and people respect you. And I know you've done it for a long time, so it must have treated you well over the years.
Yeah, so it really has been super blessed. The thing I love the most is it is building the relationships with the kids. In 13 years, I've seen kids grow out of our program. They check me out in Hy-Vee now. They're being productive citizens, and to me, that is the most rewarding part of it, is being able to see those kids grow up and thrive. And you think back 10 years ago and you're like, man, I remember when that kid couldn't even tie their shoes, and now they are out here making a difference in the world. And so that to me is rewarding, and that's why I go to work every day.
That's a beautiful thing. And people that have listened to the podcast before and people that know me know that I had originally gone into teaching. Like, I wanted to be a teacher, and I ultimately found that it wasn't for me. And I never got to that point where you get to see kids like grow into adults. And I always thought that I would feel super old when that happened. So Josh, do you feel old?
The only time that I feel old is whenever I go to one of the schools and the kids ask me to play football, and I can only play for like 15 minutes, and then I start creating like half times and like commercial breaks. So I'm like, hey guys, it's definitely a halftime show, so we're gonna have to go take a break and we can come back. And they're like, no, let's keep going. I'm like, hey, you guys, if you want to keep going, you go ahead, but I'm taking a break. So I definitely remember the days where I used to throw the football around with the kids for 2.5 hours straight. But now it's more like a half hour because they are a lot faster and have a lot more energy than I do these days. So,
man, yeah. And I remember back in the day, man, because like if I haven't played like organized sports or pick up basketball or anything like that in probably half a decade at this point. And I feel like if I went and tried to play basketball or football like you're describing, I would last 2 minutes and then I would start like coughing up blood or something. I don't even know what would happen to me. I can't even imagine.
Well, I can tell you this, and I meant to address this during my opening, but you had mentioned before about me being a better basketball player, and I definitely remember some times where we played, and we've gone back and forth, before. But I think out of all of them, I think I might be a game or two ahead of you in the win total. But I mean, who knows? Who knows? I mean, it's definitely was some good times though. Hooping it up at the local YMCA. And as far as the can't win Ferg goes, it is definitely a true thing. Um, you know how I always end up losing, no matter how well my team is at the beginning or how bad my team is at the beginning. I start off strong, and somehow I always find a way to lose. And so, and I've accepted that. So I am. I am can't win Ferg. I will always give my best, but for some reason, I just lose. So
I think I just had a realization because we're gonna get into like all these things about you as a person and why you win at life, and I think that's why you struggle so much in fantasy football because you win so much in real life. So in fantasy life, that would be it would be too much. So here we are.
Hey, you know what? So maybe so.
So let's get into this thing. Oh, also shout out to Ferg. Ferg is getting married in May. Congratulations, Ferg. Do you have anything to say about getting married? How are you feeling? Do you feel any different?
Dude, I am so ready for the end of May to come. I have a beautiful fiance, and she is great. She is gorgeous. She is kind and caring. She loves the Lord. So I couldn't have asked for a better partner in life.
Heck yes, man. I'm happy for you. And I'm ready to come celebrate. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah. So blast.
So let's get into this thing. For people that don't really know you and for people that listen typically, or even if they don't, I typically have my guests come up with a consolidated 5-word list to describe themselves. I do that for a multitude of reasons. I kind of reject this notion in general because I understand that you could not possibly wrap yourself up in 5 words, but also I like to see what people say. And I think it's a good launching point for an episode. So let's just go through your list and let's not do it in any particular order. I want to start with this first word. And if you could speak about it a little bit, I want to go with enthusiastic.
Yeah, so enthusiastic. The reason why I chose that is just the passion that I like to bring to my work. I like to be enthusiastic to relate to the kids, to relate to my staff, to bring something to the table. And I feel like the best way for me to do that is to be passionate and enthusiastic about what I do each and every day.
So I'm a person I'm a person that walks into the YMCA any given day that you're working, right? I'm like kind of hiding in a closet or something, say, and you're being enthusiastic with somebody. What might I see? Like, what are we speaking about? How do you keep people's spirits up?
I think that it really boils down to just, it's again, passion. It is showing a genuine care for the things that I do. Whether that is if I'm going to be playing with the kids in the gym, I'm going to do that with passion. If I'm going to be selling a membership, I'm going to be selling a membership with passion. And I think that stuff bleeds through. I think people see that. I think people care. And they value that whenever they come in and they see someone that really, truly cares about them and really, truly cares about the mission and the vision of whatever that is. And for me, it's the why.
Yeah, man. And when you were talking about that, I thought about I can't remember if I've talked about this on a podcast before or not, but I lived in LA for a short stint. I think a lot of people know that. And I used to play disc golf with this guy. He was 40 years my senior, I think. He was an older guy, but he worked at the school I worked at. and we would go on Saturdays and we would play disc golf for like several hours. And I remember one time we were heading out to the disc golf course and we were talking about, he was asking me like what I wanted to do with my life. And like, we were having one of those kind of conversations. And he was like, man, like whatever you do, he was like, I don't care if you're shoveling elephant shit at the circus. He was like, do it with passion, be the best person at it. Like, do it like you care. And I remember when he said that, like, I received it and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, I know, but like I've hung on to that. So, I mean, and I really feel that way. Like, we're not always working jobs that we want to work. We're not always in a place in life that we want to be, but what's in our control is how you approach something, and everything's a stepping stone. And, you know, you never know what kind of person you're making an impact on. And I think I just love what you're saying about being enthusiastic and like, and approaching your work with care.
Yeah. Well,
Go ahead.
And you know, to me too, I think that when you do that, I think, as you mentioned, everything is a stepping stone, and it can propel you to the next level. You may not be where you want to be today, but if I can show up and I can do the things that I need to do and do it well, somebody's going to see that. Somebody's going to see that. And for me, that is what's happened. That is exactly how I've gotten to where I am today. My boss was on me. I came in, I was a marketing major, got a marketing degree. And she kept telling me, Josh, you need to go back and get your education degree. Go back and get your education degree. And I kind of put that off to the side. She was like, you're so good with kids, do it. And so I ended up doing it. And, you know, she saw that I was able to do and work well with the kids. And so, and there's other things in life, other examples that I can kind of go to, but it definitely does make a difference when you approach your work with care.
Yeah, man. And also, I don't want to spend all of our time on this one word, but one final thought about this. I was thinking about it, like, even if you're not an outwardly expressive person, you don't have to be outwardly expressive. You don't have to be like up in people's faces, like getting everybody going and stuff. You can do it quietly. You can just be really good at your job. You can there's other ways to express it. So I don't want to give off the impression that like, if you're not outwardly expressive on any given day, then you're failing at life. Just approach things with care. And I think that's what's in your control. And I think you do a fine job of that, Josh. I've always thought that, which kind of naturally segues to this next word. Because when I was hearing you talk about being enthusiastic at work, I almost even said like contagious, but that's your next word, contagious. So tell me what you meant by that.
Dude, just if I am in a good mood, I feel like when I come into a room, I can make everyone else in a good mood. And I love that about the way that God has made me to be. If I come in and I'm excited about, hey, we're going to go conquer this giant. Let's go do it. I feel like I can get a group of people to go conquer that giant with me. So that's kind of where that word come to mind, contagious.
Yeah, and it made me think. We talked on intermittently. I've talked to you throughout my 20s, and like we talk. I don't know. There's years where we probably don't talk as much, but with fantasy football and stuff, we're able to stay in contact. But I talked to you for the first time in a while a few weeks ago when we were talking about doing this. And I remember it was like a Saturday, maybe. I don't know. We both had chill days ahead of us. And I was really tired when we started talking. And then by the end of our conversation, I was like, I had an extra pep in my step. I went in and I was like, Sam, I really like Josh, man. Like, I'm in a good mood. Like, but you're right. Like anytime I cross your path, and this has always been the case, Josh, even since we were kids, like it's just an instant mood boost. And I don't know if that's just innate within you or what it is. It's kind of one of those unspoken things. So I definitely agree with this word. What are we talking about with, let's go with the next word. Super general, but it could go a lot of ways. Fun.
Dude, I like to have fun. I just love to have fun. And I think that whether it is playing basketball, whether it is swimming, whether it is, being out with my friends playing board games, any of that stuff. Like, I just want to have fun. I think life is so much better when you have fun. And so that's where that comes from.
What's your favorite board game to play right now?
Settlers of Catan.
I don't know what that is. I need you to explain it to me right now.
Dude, it is a mean game. Uh, so
What is that?
basically, you have different resources, like um, you have wheat and brick, and you have all these different things. And so you're trying to collect them. You're trading with people. You have a little robber. There's different roads and settlements that you're trying to make. And so it's a super fun game. We will play it. I know that you will enjoy it.
Is it
It's
like
right up your
is it like Monopoly but with resources instead of money?
in a way, yes.
Okay.
In a way, yes.
Okay.
You're gonna love it. It is something that you would like.
All right, man. Well, post COVID or whenever I get down to Jeff City, let's knock it out. Let's do it.
Let's do it, man.
All right. So this next word, devout. Let's speak a little bit about that without going too much into that topic. I just explain generally what you mean because we have a whole segment planned.
Yeah, so definitely my faith is a big part of my life.
Mhm.
And so it is definitely who I am, and who I strive to be. So without digging in too deep, that's it.
Okay. I have questions and I want to ask them, but yes, we'll push
Yes.
off. Um,
Yeah.
let's go with this last one here. Creative.
Dude, I am a creative person. When it comes to the smarts of like math and English and all that stuff, like that's not who I am.
Mhm.
That's not who I am. I'm not dumb, I don't feel like by any means, but that is not where I thrive. I thrive in the creative environment,
Mhm.
coming up with things. I like to be witty. I like puns. I like those type of things.
Mhm.
I love arts. I like to sing. That's a big part of my life. Is music. So that I like to draw. Those little creative aspects of my life have also helped me in my job. So I like to intertwine those things in with my work with kids. So you may catch me singing some Disney tunes
Mhm.
or something like that. And so yeah, it's definitely something that I'm into is being creative.
What I didn't know you drew. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, yeah. I love to draw. I was always that kid in math class that was like doodling and
Yeah.
would always get in trouble, like just because my whole page would be like, superheroes and not actually what 2 plus 2 is. And so that that's the kind of person that I am.
Uh, in regarding the singing, I want to say like if anybody that's listening to this that isn't associated with Josh in real life or on social media, I encourage you to at least look at his social media and like look at things that he posts singing wise. Josh, you are objectively one of the best singers I've ever heard. And it started when you were young, right? Isn't your mom very involved in your all's church that you grew up in and as a singer?
Yeah,
Maybe I'm misremembering. Talk a little bit about that.
yeah. So my mom was a professional singer. She traveled the world,
Mhm.
met a lot of cool people. So Bob Hope was one of the individuals. It was kind of like a star search type thing, and she came in like second place in that. So she got to meet Bob Hope. She sang with some Sister Sledge. Was friends with Sinbad, the comedian. Fun story about that. I'll just briefly hit on that. So my mom has always, through our childhood, always told us that she knew Sinbad. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And so Sinbad was going to be in at the Fox, I think. And so I ended up buying a ticket for my mom and my dad. And I said, all right, if Sinbad is your friend, here you go. Go see him. So she gets there. She writes down a letter, gives it to the manager. The manager gives it to Sinbad. And Sinbad, at the very beginning of the concert, comes up and he's like, I have an old friend that's in the audience. Gave her a shout out in front of all these people. It was super cool. She came back, got his autograph, was able to meet him behind stage. Like, I was like, your mom, you win. So my mom is super famous in my eyes. She's awesome. She's a very, very talented singer, better than I am for sure.
Mhm.
And she's a wonderful woman.
Keep posting those like collaborations y'all do. I get so much joy out of watching those, man.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's cool to hear that Sinbad is a cool, nice person, at least in that moment. Because I always liked his movies growing up as a kid. He was really funny, and that's really cool.
Yeah,
I also had a thought. What's your mother's name? I'm sorry, I don't remember.
yeah, Sylvia.
Sylvia. And then, because it made me think, like, with somebody that's traveling, did your mom meet your dad like prior to like all of that taking off in her career, or like within that time frame?
Yeah, so they went to high school with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't hang out with the same people per se, but my mom left. She did the world tour, you could say. My
Mm-hmm.
dad stayed here. He was a DJ. My mom came into town. We're in an event where my dad was DJing. And she's like, "Ooh, who's that good-looking guy?"
Mm-hmm.
And my aunt was like, "Hey, that's Michael Fergie." She was like, "No, seriously." And so they ended up just hitting it off. And you know, years later, then you have moi. And so that there we go.
And here we are talking on a
And
podcast.
we are talking on a podcast. Wow.
All right, shout out Michael and Sylvia. Raised a wonderful son. Hopefully you're listening. Okay, so I want to transition into some of the meat of this conversation. I made a little note. I didn't tell you I was going to bring this stuff up. It's not anything crazy, Josh. But when I think of you, like as a person, what is really appealing to me about you as a person is that you don't fit into a box. Not that anybody should fit into a box, but you really don't. Like, I think of you as like the trick of all trades. Like you're a really good cook. You're very good at barbecuing. You're a wonderful singer. You draw. You like to play sports. You like to be active. Like, and then you work with kids. Can you speak a little bit about like, of all those things I named, like what is your favorite? And or do you have a favorite? And like how did you come to be this person that like dabbles in everything?
Dude, I feel like I got the best of both worlds when it comes to my parents.
Okay.
My dad is a phenomenal cook. He is a chef. He can make something out of nothing. He was a three-time state fair grand champion in barbecue. My mom, as I mentioned before, great singer, and very creative. And so my dad's got a great sense of humor. I just feel like I'm just a perfect mesh of the two. So it's super blessed. I think my favorite thing though is being active. Is being able to go outdoors and just being able to just go on bike rides, being able to go swim, being able to play basketball with my friends. I'm not the best at any of those things, but I get so much joy out of being with people and being with my friends, doing those activities that I don't necessarily have to be the best, although I am a very competitive person. Don't let my previous statement like make you think that I don't want to win. But I definitely enjoy just being with my friends. So
Yeah, he's trying to play the humble card. So if you ever do anything with him, competitively speaking, then he can use it as his advantage. I'm telling you, I know from personal experience. You mentioned so like being active. That was a segment that I wanted to talk to you about. So I literally every time we've talked over the last few weeks, I've forgotten the name of the fitness activity that you've been involved in. I keep calling them triathlons. Can you speak about what it's actually called? Number one. But number two, what made you become interested in that in the first place? And it also seems like something that, takes a lot of willpower, at least mental willpower to train for and actually go through. Can you speak about all of that right now?
yeah, so it's a sprint try that I did here. It's through the Y, and it was a great experience. So basically, what that is, it is a 5K, it is a 400-meter swim, and it's a 12-mile bike ride. So a couple of years ago, I did that. Wanted to take my fitness to the next level, and so I this came up, and I was like, man, I think I could do this. I've always done like 5Ks, and that was one thing, but swimming was kind of a no-go thing for me because I was never a great swimmer. I just knew how to not drown and die. So I could stay afloat and doggy paddle. But as far as any breaststrokes or any freestyle strokes, count me out. So I kind of had to learn that. And so that was a process. Learning the transitions between going from, your swimming to getting on your bike and running was hard, and going from your bike to running, your legs, and they don't want to. It's confusing to them because they're
Yeah.
doing all these different things, and so that was fun. Just learning that process, and being able to complete it was super fun. I'm thinking about doing it again. We talked earlier today. I told you that I had just got done doing some swimming.
Mhm.
So I did about 800 yards. And so I'm trying to slowly get that endurance back up.
Mhm.
But it's a lot of fun. And, I just like to just relax and let it do its thing. And so, yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, man. It's I mean, I've talked on previous podcasts, like I've done a half marathon. There's something about like physically accomplishing something that you didn't think prior that you could have done.
Hmm.
When you went into it, was your goal simply to finish, or did you have a desired time that you wanted to get? Like, how did you feel about like afterwards?
Yeah, so I felt good after I finished it. I wanted to get done within 2 hours. I'm not like a super like athlete by any means.
Hmm.
I'd say I'm somewhat athletic,
Hmm.
but I was not trying to be the first person done. I wanted to complete it. I did get a cramp on my run. If you are familiar with the Jeff City area, like you are, Blake, you know that we live in hills,
Hmm.
and so I was running up the hill by the old prison, and I ended up getting a cramp in my leg. And one of the cool things was my cousin had came down to visit me, and she followed me from each section of it and was cheering me on. And so that was super cool. And so I got there and I was like, I got a cramp in my leg. And so she's like, suck it up. Let's go. You're like right to the end. You've got like 5 minutes left, which really was like 15. And
Yeah.
so I'm like continuing to push through and push and push and push. And so, man, once you get done, man, it's such a release,
Hmm.
being able to say, man, I did this, and I can knock this off my bucket list. And so, yeah, it was an awesome experience. Super grateful for my cousin for doing that.
Yeah. Shout out
'Cause I
Leandro, right?
probably, yeah, Leandro. Because honestly, if it was just me, I probably just like stopped on the hill and then, in the fetal position, like looking for a Gatorade, you
Yeah.
know, bath or something. I don't know, but it definitely helped me get to the finish line. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
definitely a mental hurdle.
Yeah. It's you probably would have maybe started walking or something. Like it speaks to what I love about that story you just told, and what I love about like physically accomplishing something is it shows how much of it is in your head, right? Like your body was literally failing, but you were still able to keep going. So it's like
Mhm.
it's like your body's resilient, but also like your mind it can go to like a place that is complacent, or like it's just the power of your mind. And I think that's growing up, I played sports and I lifted and stuff until like a few years ago. I started running, and I just have fallen in love with running because of the mental part of it. It's always just like, I want to stop. This hurts. I'm tired. And if you just push through it, like you just said, when you get to the end, there's nothing like it. Like it's just
Yeah,
like the best feeling ever.
yeah.
Um,
I to just piggyback off of that real fast. So there is a video out there. Idris Elba, he's talking about swimming, and it basically hits that exact same thing. He's like, if I'm sitting here and I'm counting each lap, I'm gonna tuck her out, is what he says. I'm gonna tuck her out, and he says if I can just get over that and just push through, pushing, working technique, working technique, I'm gonna go past and succeed my goal. And
mhm.
so I love like listening to that every so often because it gets my mind in the right spot. It's like, you know what, especially now that I'm swimming, it's like, yeah, if I'm sitting here thinking like, oh man, I have so much further to go till I get to 400, so much further to get there. I'm like, no, put that beside. Like, I'm gonna go, I'm gonna push, I want to make sure my arms are doing the right thing. I want to make sure that my hips are turning to the right way.
Mhm.
And so it definitely helps me get to where I want to be. And I think that is kind of just the motive of life too. Like,
Mhm.
if we sit here and we're counting, oh man, I got another day of work. I got another. like, no, let's go in, let's do our best, let's continue to push through, and we'll get to the finish line. We'll be good.
I love that, man. And it made me think about like this past year has been hard for everyone for a multitude of reasons. I've been working from home a lot, and like it got me out of my exercise routine, and like I had a really long period where I was really struggling with that. And I have this Apple Watch, right? And I would like go and I'd like do something for a day, and then I'd be like, okay, I did it, and then I wouldn't do anything for 5 more days in terms of exercise. And then I started noticing like I was putting so much pressure on like everything this thing was counting, and then I felt like a failure, and then it would just make me not want to do it at all. So then I got out of my head, like you were describing, he was talking about like not counting and obsessing over everything. I literally started taking my watch off. I didn't wear it for like 3 weeks, and I slowly got back into it. And then I got to a place where I was doing it consistently, and then I was able to incorporate this back. But it was because the mental part. I was like so focused on the numbers and like failing, and it's just like, I mean, you've been exercising your whole life. Like it's just an interesting mind-body connection. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next topic.
Let's go. Let's go.
So do you want to talk? I'll give you an option, Josh. I'll give you the option.
Sure, let's do it.
What do you want to talk about next that we talked about we were going to talk about?
Dude, let's dive in on the being black in America. Let's do it.
Let's roll, baby. Okay. So yeah, Josh, I don't even have a question. Well, yes, I do. Because we talked about this, and I think you were wanting to talk about like a little bit, like, because we're from Jefferson City and it's a predominantly white city. And you said that when you went to elementary school, you were, I don't know, one of like a handful of black kids that went to the school at that time. Just speak about your experience at that school and anything else you want to talk about regarding being black in America, black in Jefferson City.
Yeah, so basically, as you mentioned, when me and my sister, we lived in Jeff City, we moved to Holt Summit, went to elementary school there. We were one of the few African Americans at that school. There was an African American teacher who was phenomenal and just super, super kind, super great woman. And enjoy running into her wherever I do these days. But when we had is Miss Webb, Mrs. Webb. She was great.
Yeah.
But so we had some times where things were difficult, things were hard. And so just kind of give you a little bit of background on that. So when we would ride the bus, sometimes kids would call us names, whether they called us monkeys, call us the N-word, things like that. When we'd go home, we'd tell our mom and dad, like, hey, such and such did this. And, my parents, they were awesome in the sense that they told us that, look, no one is better than you are. You're not better than anyone else. There's nothing wrong with the color of your skin or how God made you. And so a lot of that, and we're going to kind of get into me being short and all that stuff, but being content with who we are and knowing that there's nothing wrong with who we are is huge. And that's been a huge part of my life, particularly. But there's been times we'd go in the grocery store and people would, look at us like we were going to steal something. I've had people make comments about, hey, do you even have money for that? And things like that. And it's like, yes, I have, I work, I have a job, but, a lot of it though, Blake, is, I try not to let those things bog me down. Life can be so miserable if you take everything that everyone has ever said to you and about you and really just let that resonate in you. I have to let that stuff go. And I think that is super important. And so that's a little bit about, my experience with race. And I think that a lot of other people have had it a lot worse than I have. My parents have mentioned stories of people spitting on them as they were walking to school. And so in that sense, we have come a long way. we have so much further to go
Hmm.
in order to have equality. And so that's what I really wanted to kind of get across.
Hmm.
And I believe that some of that's possible. I don't think that it's going to be perfect ever,
Hmm.
but I think that we as people can do a better job of being kind to one another. And I think that is where it starts. I think it is being kind and being compassionate to one another. And
Hmm.
if we can do those things, I think that is the step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's it's an interesting it's an interest political social climate right now, right? And like everything that's going on with race relations in America, it's things are really tense right now. And I know that like some things I've heard from people that have for whatever reason have a hard time like coming to terms with like that there is racism or that there's microaggressions or that there's these subtle things that you may be doing that could be offensive towards somebody or be impacting their life in a kind of unspoken way. I hear people like their counterpoint is like, this is the best time it's ever been in the history of America to be a black person. And it's like, okay, that could be true, but it's still far from like the ideal. So, like, what are we even talking about whenever you're trying to mention that? And I know that like you had mentioned that regarding like the things that people said to you or the actions that people committed against you. I wanted to know because you mentioned that you like let it go. You kind of like and you kind of just act. It seemed as though you were talking about like compartmentalizing or just putting it in a different place in your brain. I know that your parents were really good and like positive words of affirmation and talking to you about it and stuff. But I know that also actions can really be formative and everlasting, especially when you're a kid. So can you speak to like maybe you were aware of it or not, but like how you were able or how you're able to like let it go or how you're able to move past that? Like, do you do anything active to do that?
Yeah. So I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. So
Okay.
I letting it go, I think, was maybe a poor choice of words on my
Okay.
behalf. I
Okay.
think that it really is, as you mentioned, compartmentalizing,
Hmm.
because things that happen to you, you never just can just erase them from your mind and say, okay, well, that didn't happen.
Hmm.
But you learn to put them in their appropriate boxes, hopefully.
Hmm.
And so, for instance, when we've had all these, racial tensions in America come up, with the George Floyd, all that, Breonna Taylor, all these different things. And
Hmm.
people are asking me, hey, Josh, what do we, as a Caucasian person, as a white person, what do we do? You know, then those memories start to pop back in your mind. You're like, oh, yes, I remember when that happened. Oh, I remember, when this person said this thing. I remember how this felt.
Hmm.
And to me, that was so exhausting.
Hmm.
And I know to a lot of African Americans, a lot of black people, it's just like, oh my goodness. It was like it was just reliving some of those things that you kind of pressed down,
Hmm.
which, I feel like sometimes it was kind of good to look at some of those things and to process that. And if I needed to replace them in another category, then I could.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that was probably a better way of kind of explaining it is putting it in compartmental spots.
Hmm.
And um, yeah.
I think it's something that came up in my mind when you were talking about like white people coming up to you and asking you like, what do we do to be better, and like, act, when I think about that, it makes me feel like when people ask you that kind of question, in any way, does that ever feel off-putting to you? Because the way I perceive that, it's like it shouldn't really be on a black person to have that information or to even be the person that has to do that. Really, it should be the white people's responsibility to like look at what's happening, listen, and then react. It shouldn't be like you're just a person that's
Mm.
existing and like you don't that's a whole like not only do you have to not only are you having to experience racism whether it's overt or very subtle, but you're also having to educate people about how not to do that. Like that's too much for you to bear, at least the way I'm perceiving it. Do you have
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes down to is doing the research, like figuring out the history,
Mhm.
like you doing that yourself, figuring, okay, this is how, the struggles that African Americans have gone through, or
Mhm.
in not even just African Americans, Asians or Hispanic, like look at other minorities and look at what they have had to endure. Um, and then I think back on just like it's to me, it's a heart issue. It is definitely something that people have to wrestle with in their heart.
Mhm.
And being kind, I can't hit that enough. Be kind to one another.
Mhm.
Like if we can just be kind, our world would be so much better.
Yeah, man.
It really would. If you see someone at the door, like at a door, their hands are full, open the door for them.
Mhm.
Say good morning,
Mhm.
smile.
Mhm.
Like those little things can add up to be so big.
Yeah.
Because so many times we try to just cast it, this whole group of people over here, they think this one way, and this whole group over here, they think another way, and that's just not true.
Yeah.
There's so many people in this world, and we all have minds of our own. We all think differently. And I think that's great. That's great. People have different views on many different things than I do, and that's fine.
Mhm.
But I can be accepting, and I can still love the other person, despite our differences. And I think that once we can do that, again, we can take the step in the right direction.
Yeah, it's I love how you said that, and it just makes me think that uh we're at such a weird point in history where people are like I on a recent podcast that hasn't aired yet, Monica was talking about this topic about being kind and like um she was talking and we had a conversation about people for some reason have a well not I don't want to paint with broad strokes or however you say that expression. I a lot of people or some people uh err on the side of people like they assume that somebody's best interest isn't in mind before they assume that somebody's best interest is in mind. Like they err on the side of doubt as opposed to the side of like this person's probably genuine. And I
Mhm.
think if people could just start like looking at it through a different lens, and then if somebody winds up to be a bad person or whatever, okay, but like why start there? And if
Yeah,
you actively like try to like rewire your brain the best you can to start like giving people the benefit of the doubt up front, I think that that would kind of go with what you're talking about, and
yeah.
we'd see some progress.
But Blake, that's hard. That's hard to do that,
Uh-huh.
and it requires work
Yeah.
on the individual's behalf.
Uh-huh.
And some people don't want to put that work in. They are very content with where they are.
Yeah.
So that's the unfortunate piece is,
Hmm.
you are going to have to put in work. You are going to have to reprogram and say, okay, that's not right. The way that I think about, this individual or this person is not who they are.
Hmm.
Just because I met, someone before and they thought that this was, they thought one way, doesn't mean that all people that are black or are white or Asian think that way. That's just you can't, well, as you mentioned, paint that broad strokes. Like
Hmm.
you can't do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's kind of, I mean, if we're cutting down to brass tacks here, like this is kind of a major component of why I started this podcast in the first place. Like I'm trying to find commonality among different people. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about that topic so candidly. And then you had mentioned earlier, and for anybody that's watching, like Josh, you present as a smaller person, and you've lived your whole life as a shorter person. Uh, and I just want you to speak about like your experiences with that. And I know I had talked to you before this. We've never really talked about this topic, one other that I can remember. And just provide people with like some insight into like what that was like growing up and like what happened with doctors and all of that.
yeah. So yes, I am short. There, that is who I am. I am.
Fact check. Yeah.
I am a short African American man, and um, I have been this way. I've always been shorter than shortest one in our class and whatnot. So when I was growing up, my parents, they took me to the doctor they kind of said that I grew slower than normal. So I ended up getting some growth hormone shots. Those didn't work. I ended up taking like some vitamins and a bunch of different stuff, which they never did work. And for a while they're like, you kind of wrestle with that because you just want to kind of be like everyone else.
Hmm.
And then I got to the point where I did that. Hey, me being 4'9" or whatever it is, it's okay. Like it is fine to be short.
Hmm.
God made me this way. I believe that it makes us in His image, and so for me to say that I shouldn't be this way would be to say that God doesn't know what He's doing, and so I've accepted that, and so I have had rough times. I have dealt with a little bit of depression from time to time, just because people do say things. People look at you anytime that someone's different. You get people that want to stare, whether you're in the grocery store, or people may say off-putting comments, and they may not say it to hurt my feelings or something like that, but it can hurt my feelings, and even to this day, like there's things that people make that say you catch me on a wrong day and you say something, I'll feel sad about it, like
Yeah.
that's just how it is. But I have learned again that it is fine to be different. I think that is one thing that has kind of helped me set myself apart, from just individuals, people in my community. I've been super blessed to have a lot of opportunities to be involved in my community, and I think that God has used me being different for His good, and not my own. And so I think that all things have worked together perfectly. I don't know if Blake, if I could just go back and say, if I could change one thing about my life, what would it be? For a while I used to say, I'd love to be tall. I'd love to be tall.
Hmm.
I don't know if I'd say that anymore.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a good place to be in,
Hmm.
like, because I think that shows that I'm fine with who I am.
Hmm.
And I hope that even the listeners that are out there are fine with who they are. I mean, people, you may have red hair, blue hair, you may be short, you may be black, you may be white, you may have, be extremely hairy. You're there's so many. You may be like Blake. I mean, I hope Blake, you are content with who you are. You are a hairy individual. You always have been.
Yeah.
And I hope that the listener. I hope that they find peace with who they are, and have used the gifts and the abilities that they have, to make themselves better. And that's what I hope to strive to do each day.
So would you say that, like, uh in relate, because you mentioned like having some depression here or there, if somebody caught you on the wrong day and said something, it would stick with you. Have you found outside, like, I mean, I would assume that a lot of it has been your faith that's helped you cope with a lot of this, and like prayer and things like that. But is there anything else that you can actively think of, or has that been pretty much your main tool?
That is my main tool. There are certain things that I like to do to kind of just get away. And those things are being athletic. Those things are like going out and doing things, like maybe going on a walk. Maybe it is, going on a hike or riding my bike or swimming or playing basketball. Basketball is a huge outlet for me. I love to play. I have a group of guys that we used to play. Obviously, COVID has kind of messed that up a little bit, but when we would play every Sunday, and spending time with those guys was super beneficial. Miss that camaraderie, and hopefully we can get back to that at some point. But just being able to just get out and just get away sometimes, is a great way to kind of let go of some of those negative comments.
Yeah. So it's like a combination of you like being active and doing things you enjoy in conjunction with like your faith and prayer and your relationship with God. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um That's good to know. I I I have a couple other questions about this topic, if that's okay with you, Josh. I appreciate you.
Dude,
Oh,
yeah.
um, and this may be more for me. I don't even. This might be a me thing about this dynamic. But I met you in like 6th or 7th grade. I think we started going to the same. We went to the same middle school. And I remember meeting you, and I remember just like we were describing earlier, like instantly it was like, this dude's awesome. Like he lights up a room. Like I want to be associated with this person, and we've been pretty close ever since. But then when I was thinking about it before this interview, I don't ever. You mentioned people like at the grocery store, like making a weird look or a comment or something like that, but it was always subtle in your description just now. I don't remember a time that I recall that people were mean to you in school. Was that a thing that ever occurred?
No, Blake, here's what happens in school is people would kind of joke sometimes, like, they'd make, the short jokes or something. But me, I like to joke too. I have a good sense of humor. Like I can take it like just as much as I can give it. And so I just kind of let that stuff go. But sometimes when those things get said, then you kind of go back and it resonates with you, and you're like, oh, in the heat of the moment, we were just having fun. But then you sit back and you're like, oh man, that was kind of hurtful. Like, yeah. And I think that sometimes people are mindful of that. Like we don't realize the impact of words, whether we're joking or not. And sometimes, maybe it was just me not going up and saying to the individuals, hey, what you said was hurtful. Probably would have been more beneficial on their end, because I don't feel like they were malicious in their intent. They were just having a good time, and me as well with the comments that I made. But I think that coming up and just saying to them, hey man, dude, that hurt, and have some kind of reconciliation, and be able to kind of move forward. But yeah, I literally have been so blessed. Like the people that I've been around, like my family and friends, school, like that's never been a huge issue. I mean, you do get some people, man, that will look at you weird. I had the police called on me one time because I was short. So basically, I was at the grocery store. I kid you not, Blake. I was at the grocery store. I go in, get my groceries. I'm coming back out. I had a police officer sitting at my car, and it's like, yeah, somebody had called and said that there was a kid that was driving the car. And so it's like, do you have your ID? I'm like, yeah, I have my ID. And I'm like looking around the parking lot, like, who is this that called the police on me? Like, literally just come up and ask me, like, are you a kid? Like, no, I'm not a kid. Like, at that point, probably 22, 23 years old. But I mean, it's stuff like that. And then you kind of let that stuff sit with you a little bit. Like, man, that kind of hurt a little bit. Like, and so, yeah, it's little things like that. And again, it is being comfortable with knowing who you are, knowing who God says that I am, fearfully, wonderfully made, and letting it go, just letting that piece just fill my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on one hand, I find it more remarkable that you didn't experience like overt like bullying or picking as a young kid like that. But also on this other hand, like I'm super pleased to hear that for you.
Yeah.
And when you were talking just now, you were talking about how like with the story about the in the parking lot and somebody called the police, and like after you thought about it, it was like, oh man, that really stung. Like I had like, I'm not trying to make this podcast about me, but I had this this realization like 6 months ago during a work meeting. I don't know, maybe it was more than 6 months ago, but we were talking. I'm a therapist. For anybody that doesn't know that. And we had a meeting about like how like the racial tension, how it was impacting like our therapeutic relationships, because a lot of our clients at that time with the agency I was working with were African American. And I remember I had one of the most cathartic experiences of my life, because I'm a mixed race person. My dad's Native American, my mom is white, and it's been a weird thing to navigate throughout my life, because there's periods where I kind of experience like some racism. And then also I'm white at the same time. So I don't like to like fully commit that like I've experienced racism, but there's things like where people have like, I can tell people are nervous on a plane when I'm standing by a bathroom at the front of the cockpit, and like weird little subtle stuff like that. But what I was talking about was in this meeting, I realized how the build of all these little things that you don't really notice in the moment over time, how they impact like your life. And I realized like, oh man, that's affected my worth. And like I haven't felt like I belonged places before. And it's all because of these little things. And you were saying words matter and actions matter. So I guess I just wanted to take the opportunity to like illustrate that. Like you were saying you didn't experience overt like bullying or like anything like that, but still like be careful about the words you choose because they can affect people's lives.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if you have thoughts about that. I think I just wanted the opportunity to say that, but
No, I can't agree with you more. Like, it's definitely important. It's definitely important to watch the things that you say,
mhm,
and those words they do have an impact. I mean, whatever you say, you're either going to speak death or you're going to speak life to someone. And
mhm,
so I'd rather speak life to people and instead of putting them down. And
yeah,
I'm not a perfect person. I mess up, and so I have to sometimes come and I have to ask for forgiveness from people. It's like I said something, and I sometimes I say things and then I go home and I sleep on it. I'm like, I can't sleep. I'm just like, I probably have been rude to this individual. I have to go back and I have to apologize. Like, man, I am sorry if I
yeah,
did that. And sometimes they're like, oh, I didn't even take offense to that. But it's so much easier for me to just go out and just say, hey, please forgive me for this. And
yeah. And
it makes me
people,
feel better.
yeah, people appreciate the gesture. Or people will be like, like no, like I'm cool, like we're good. And then people like, I feel like if somebody said that to me and I didn't have any, I would appreciate it that much more, even if I did take offense to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just because they're being
absolutely.
diligent.
Yeah.
And I also something that came up when you were talking about when I asked you the question about when you were a kid and if you ever experienced bullying or anything like that.
Mhm.
You were talking about how like you could be going back and forth with somebody and you would be saying things and it would be presenting as this joke. And then later you'd be like, oh man, that really affected me. For the longest time, I'm a therapist. I'm a therapist. I'm a therapist. I keep saying that. But I know a lot about behavior and I know a lot about how the mind works. I'm far from perfect. I'm very early in my career, but for the longest time, I with like people like friends, I would do that. Like we would jab and we make fun of each other. And for some reason it took me starting to date Sam for Sam to be like, "Hey, like what they were saying was mean to you." And I'd be like, "No, no, no," and I'd like pass it off. And then
Yeah.
it took like a bunch of those instances for me to be like, huh. And it's like it's this culture of like we're dudes. And maybe it happens for females too. I don't know. I'm just speaking to my experience, but like for some reason in my experience with guys, like jabbing each other and going. We even started the podcast talking
Yeah.
about how I'm a better basketball player and all that stuff. Like it's just
I
what
mean, but I am, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah, but for it at a certain point it can become mean and it's impactful. And I think it's what you're talking about, just going back and apologizing if you feel like it went too far is an important thing to do. Um, Josh, I want to be mindful of time. I think we're coming up on an hour. I want to do like maybe 10 more minutes if that's cool.
Dude, you're great, man. Let's keep it going.
But I also want to take as long as this takes because this next
Yeah,
topic,
I don't rush it.
yeah, this next topic is a huge component of your life. You've mentioned God throughout this podcast. I think you even quoted some scripture. Can you speak a little bit about that? And like, when did that start? Has it been your whole life? Like, when did it get really strong? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm,
So, it kind of my testimony, and I love to use my testimony
mhm,
because it's been great. The way that God has kind of worked in my life. So I grew up in a gospel family, Christian family, raised that way. Always attended church. Kind of got away from that for a little bit. I still, when we were in college, I mean, we talked about it earlier, man. We used to go out and have a great time. We party, we drink, and do all kinds of different things. And I would go out to do that Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning. I'd get up and I'd go to church.
Hmm.
And I just kind of lived that life and lived in that circle for so long. And then something dawned on me that I wanted more, and so I knew it was kind of like almost like a struggle with my, like, who am I? Am I this person that gets drunk and is doing these things, or am I this believe do I believe in Christ? Like, wanting to live that out and live it effectively and doing it well. And then I realized that I'm not that person that just goes out every Saturday night. Like, that was fun for the period, but that's not my character. That's not who I am.
Hmm.
I am this person that believes in Christ. I believe that he died for my sins. I believe these things. And so that transformation kind of made me a little more serious in my walk with Christ. And so, fast forward, a couple of years, got into my church now, and been able to lead our life group, being able to participate and just kind of grow in my faith. And it's truly transformed who I am. And God's it's been so gracious on me, because again, I've mentioned this before. I am a sinner just like everybody else. I make mistakes,
Hmm.
and so God's grace has definitely been evident in my life, and it is it's been great, man. I really feel like I'm in a really good place. I'm nowhere close to where I strive or I want to be, in my walk with him, but I definitely not where I was before. So
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful that you were kind of at that crossroads. Probably I think that was probably in your early 20s or something like that. And then you chose you chose a different path than the one you were going down. But when I think about like big moments, like that feels like a big moment in your life. Like when you're 75-year-old man, like sitting on your porch feeding your birds. I feel like you're gonna think back about. I got you, man. I,
yeah,
uh, I think.
hold on, guys. He knows that these are things that I like to do. I like to like sit on my rocking chair outside, and I like to feed my birds. I am an old soul,
Yeah.
and so that is where that's coming from. So go proceed.
Someday the outward appearance will fit the old man behavior. But until then, but no, like, so I'm saying, like, when you're that age and you're looking back, I feel like that's gonna be one of the big moments in your life that you're like, oh, that was a formative time in my life. So my thought is like, was it a collection of all these like weekends, like going to the lake and like going to Bones in the Alley, and then going to church? Like, it was a collection of all those things that led to you like eventually just kind of like, I don't want to do this anymore? Or was there a more singular, finite like instance that you can remember in your mind that really like made you want to make the switch? How do you remember that?
I, Blake, I think it was a collective thing.
Okay.
I think it was, I don't need to do this to have fun. One, um, and I was searching for this puzzle piece, and I I kept trying to pick up something, whether it was drinking or doing all these different things, and it wasn't fitting into my puzzle.
Hmm.
And then I found Christ in who he is, and I put that in my puzzle and it fit. And now I have this beautiful picture.
Hmm.
And so to me, that's what it was. It was looking at all these different things that the world offers, that is at some point okay,
Hmm.
but realizing that that's not what is going to complete me,
Hmm.
and that I needed Christ to fill that hole in my life,
Hmm.
and so I feel much better. I feel like I am complete whenever I am closest to Him.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what it was for me. It was a accumulation of
Yeah,
different things. So
that makes total sense. And uh, what I want to ask you too, like after making that decision, like you were like, I'm not gonna engage in this behavior anymore, and like I'm gonna switch to focusing on my relationship with God. And I know like from talking to people within my work and also like just reading books and things like that. And I'm not suggesting that people we hung out with were alcoholics, but like when I listen to interviews and read things about people that struggle with alcoholism, when they talk about quitting drinking, they say a hard part of it is like the relational ramifications. So like people like getting upset that you're not going out and doing that anymore. Did you experience any of that? And you don't have to use names or anything, but was that a hard part of the decision making process, like the relationships that would be altered?
you know what, Blake, I am super blessed to have the friends that I
Uh-huh.
have, like you, and some of our other friends. They never have held that against me, that I didn't want to go out, or didn't want to drink. They just accepted that.
Mhm.
And I think I remember you one time when you asked me, it's like, hey, I realized that you're not drinking. Do you want to do XYZ or whatever? And I'm like, no, that's fine. Like, you called me. That to me meant a lot.
Yeah.
That showed me that you cared about me as a person.
Mhm.
And so I think that those are the people that I have associated with. And I couldn't have asked for better friends. And so, I mean, thank you. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
um, it speaks to you as a person, to that you care about individuals. And I think that, like, our friends, like you mentioned, I wouldn't say that they're alcoholics or anything like that.
Mhm.
I that's just a choice that I personally have made. And to say that I haven't had a drink since my mid 20s would be a lie. I mean, I've had a beer with my friends, or we'd go out and do this, and I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to come off as a person that says that drinking is evil. Stay away. If you do that, you're a bad person. That's
Yeah.
not what I'm saying, at all. It was a personal choice for me. Whenever I get drunk or I drink too much, my mind is not. I'm not processing and making the decisions that I want to make.
Mhm.
And so whenever that enables me to make good decisions, that's something that I don't want to do.
Mhm.
And so that's what's kind of my basis behind, and not drinking to the extent of which I did, back when we were in college.
Yeah, man, and I appreciate the kind words that you said in relation to me. I appreciate you saying that. But for me, it just feels like you're my friend, and I just want to make sure you feel okay. So it doesn't feel like anything. But I appreciate that that meant something to you, and that you just said that to me. But also my relationship with alcohol has been I still drink from time to time socially. What's been difficult for me throughout my life is when I go out to drink, if I go out and I'm not at my house, like just kind of casually having a beer with Sam or something, when I go out, the social anxiety gets to me. And then like once I get to a certain point of drinking, like I just go, 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 go. And I don't like that about myself.
Mhm.
So I've been slowly over the course of the last several years, like being very deliberate about like I'm going to like set this limit, and it's helped me a lot. Like I just had a month of no drinking, and I get a lot more done. Like I don't know. And I'm not saying that if you drink that's like you said that that's the worst thing ever, but it's been an interesting road for me with alcohol and my relationship with it. But now I feel like I'm at a pretty good place that I can have a couple even if I'm out socially, and that's okay with me. Um, I know we kind of somehow we started with your faith, and then we're talking about alcohol. I want to go back to the faith topic, because I think this could be an interesting dialogue, and we don't have to go into a lot of detail, but I've talked about it on previous podcasts before, and I know people that know me like I'm not very I don't rule out that there's an afterlife, and I don't have any ill will for anybody that had like um, that follows a particular religion. and I almost am envious of people that are strong in their faith, because I don't. It's hard for me to do that, because I'm under the school of thought like we can't possibly know what happens after we die. And I think what also has formed my opinion about that is, when I grew up, my dad worked weird hours, and like we couldn't consistently go to church. And my grandpa was a Baptist preacher, which is interesting. But my mom like couldn't get us to church all the time. And then as I grew older, it just wasn't that important to me. And then like I found myself like with the people I was hanging out with, like I was thinking very critically, and it just I didn't. That's not the path I went down. I didn't have that same connection with God and with a particular religion. Um, so I guess the thought I'm having, one last thought. I I do, even like now as an older person, I'm in my 30s now. It's a hard, like I live in St. Louis and I have a few friends here, but it's really hard to make friends as an adult. And I've even considered, like, I know people that think similarly to me that have started going to church for the community of it. I even see the appeal of it that way. But it's just not something that I identify with, or that is a huge part of my life. So when you hear or know people like that, Josh, like, because I feel like religion's under a bad lens right now. I feel like if you talk about being religious, people like think that you're marginalizing people, or you're like, you're sticking your nose up at people. Can you speak a little bit about like that may or may not be the case, and like how you feel about people that are saying what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I appreciate you sharing. I had no idea about your grandpa being a Baptist
Dude.
preacher.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's cool.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, I think you're right. I think that individuals, religion does sometimes get a bad rap,
Mhm.
because people are very critical of one another. But I think one of the things to look at is, and I mentioned it before, is I'm a sinner just like anybody else. Like
Mhm.
I still make mistakes.
Mhm.
I'm nowhere perfect. I have so far to go in order to be perfect, and that's only going to happen when I feel like when I die and
Mhm.
I go to heaven. Is when that will be. That's whenever I will be perfect,
Mhm.
because of Christ and His righteousness. Um, so I feel like sometimes people want to make judgments and they want to say, well, you're a drunkard, you are gay or lesbian, or you are this or you are that, where that's not what you should do. The Bible says to love one another,
Mhm.
to love one another, um, and that's despite their sins. And God, I feel like God, He has taken me where I am. He's accepted me for who I am. He knew what I was going to be before I was it.
Mhm.
And so to me, that's where it lies. It's not about me pointing my finger at individuals. If I see someone that is a sinner, or they're doing things that I don't agree with, I can feel like I can love on that person
Mhm.
and show, let Christ shine through me.
Mhm.
I think is one of the best ways to show Christ, not me coming up and saying, "Hey, if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell." I really hate that message,
Mhm.
because it really just, I feel like for the individual that's receiving it, are probably going to take that the wrong way. They're not going to be accepting to that. And for me, it's not really much about religion. It's about a relationship.
Mhm.
So I have a relationship with Christ.
Mhm.
I spend time in the Bible, and the more that I spend time in my Bible, the more that I get to know that person. The more that I pray, just like we have communication. When the more we talk, the closer we are with one another. The more time I spend with you, Blake, the closer that we get. That's the way that I feel about the Bible, and I feel about Christ. Is the more that I spend in my Bible, the more that I read biblical books or whatever it is, pray, the closer my relationship with it is with Him. So religion, I'm not about that. I'm about a relationship, and so that. Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
I'm sure I've heard people explain it that way, but honestly, that felt like that was the first time it was explained that way to me. Because you're saying, so let me get this. I want to make sure I'm being. I want to clarify. So do you not identify with a specific or a particular religion? It's more just you read like. Forgive me if I'm wrong. I'm not well versed in this, but like the Old Testament, New Testament, and like what the words say in that, and your relationship with God.
So I go to a Baptist church,
Okay.
and so for me, it's been a great church. I go to Freshwater Church in Jeff City. It's a biblical church. We read through the Bible. We spend time with one another. We have community, which is great. I classify myself as a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I feel like the relationship part to me is the biggest part, because that's what Christ in the Bible, that's what he tells, he wants to have that relationship with us. And so that's where I come from the relationship verbiage is getting to know Christ and getting to know the you know more about him, and that's the better that I feel is whenever I get to spend time with him.
Yeah, and I want to ask you a question because it came up when you were talking about like reading, when you were talking about reading, and it made me think about like I've read the Bible or at least parts of it, and there's been things where I'm like, I don't like that. Like, has that ever happened to you where you disagreed with something that you read or that you necessarily didn't really think uh, was a good thing? And if so, like, how did you manage that?
Dude, I think that there is things in the Bible that are challenging.
Yeah.
Uh, there are things that will challenge your faith, but for me, like, I believe that the Bible is true.
Hmm.
So if I believe that, and there's things that in there that, man, I just can't, I don't understand. I need to dig a little bit more than I need to do that.
Hmm.
Um, so I wouldn't say that I necessarily disagree with them, but it's challenging because in my mind, I think I know that the word of God is true. So I just need to kind of check my heart and say, okay, if this is what it is that I say that it is, okay, where am I off at? What do I need to do to figure out? Okay, this is biblically sound, or whatever that is. So yeah, there are definitely challenging things. I mean, seriously, I mean, it is a big book, and there is a lot of stuff in it, and some things I understand, some things I don't. I am not a biblical scholar. I'm not a theologian. I don't claim to be, but I do believe that the Bible is true, and I do think that there are some very challenging things in there. But again, it is digging in, spending time, reading other resources, other people's opinion on it, and sometimes it's just like, oh, didn't think of it from that perspective. Got it. I understand now. So yeah.
Yeah, I think I like that answer. It's like you're recognizing that there's things that are challenging um, within the reading, but also like you're saying like that makes you need to step up your game and like think about things in a different way or like seek new information. And I think
Mhm.
I think that's being a person and like progressing. And it's just like a microcosm of a event that is describing that. Well, Josh, I appreciate like your candid discussion about that, and I'm super happy that for you as an individual that became such a strong force in your life, and your relationship with God has like led you to so many good things. And I appreciate you sharing that. I want to end on a couple things here. I want to ask you a question, and
Okay.
and I didn't prepare you for this. It's not that serious, but I want to know what you're gonna say. So, if you could take one problem in the world away, any problem, small, big, whatever, if you could take any problem that you've observed as a problem, what would you take away and why?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind
Sure.
is, you know what? I think driving through Kansas really blows. And I think that that's a problem. And so if I could either figure out a way to make an underground road
Uh-huh.
where we could just put people's cars in there and like shoot them through that state
Uh-huh.
fast and efficiently and safely. I think that would make the world a better place. So that is the first thing that comes to my mind. Yeah.
That's
So
so funny.
sorry, anyone that's listening that is from Kansas. This is nothing against you. I just think that you have a very flat state, and it can be very boring at times.
I will say, I will make a firm statement. I will take a stance. It is objectively a brutal state to look at while you're in it. There's no redeeming like scenery. I think there's one part of Kansas, like down south maybe, that has like some but I've never been there. But other than that, it's just flat and
Yeah.
a lot of windmills. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. I mean, it's a good state. It is one of the 50 states. It's awesome. But yeah, I just don't like, I try to avoid it if at all possible. So
it's so funny that your mind went there. I mean, Elon Musk is, I don't know where they're at with it, but he's trying to make the Hyperloop. And that's kind of,
I heard that. And I hope that Kansas is the first place that they implement that.
We'll see. We'll see if we can start pulling some strings and make that happen.
Yeah. Let's sign a petition, get it out there. All the viewers, one of you listen and come up with a petition to make Kansas the first state for the Hyperloop.
Josh, I appreciate you coming on. Before we end this thing, I've been asking people this. I just want to know, next 5, 10, however many years of your life, like, what are you hoping to get out of life? Where do you see yourself? What are you going to be doing?
Dude, that is a loaded question.
Heck yeah.
So basically, yeah, I'm getting married, as mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
So plan to be married. I hope to have some kids.
Mm-hmm.
I plan on I want to make an impact, Blake, wherever I'm at. And I want to be able to build relationships. I want people to again see Christ in me wherever I am. I mean, whether that is me teaching, whether that's me still being at the YMCA, whether that is, even if I'm flipping burgers at that time, I don't know what that's going to be. But I hope that whatever I do, I'm working at it well, and I'm putting all that I am into it, and that people would be impacted in a good way. So.
Yeah, man, I think as long as you keep your drive to affect other people's lives, then everything else is going to fall in place for you. And I hope you get those kids. I hope everything works out the way you want it to work out. Any final thoughts for me, Josh, before we end this thing?
Yeah, I want to know that answer for you. Where do you see this podcast in 5 years?
Oh my God, Josh, you flipped it on me. I wasn't ready. Where do I see this podcast in 5 years?
Yeah.
I have this vision of, so what I feel in my heart about this podcast is I think it's objectively a cool thing, and I feel confident in my abilities in this part, right? The conversational part. And I feel confident in that it will make people come together if people are willing to listen. And I feel like we're at a point in our history as humanity where people are super isolated and people want to like go into these different areas of like, no, we're over here. And I'm trying to like get people to get here. And I feel confident in my ability to doing that. The thing I don't feel confident about yet is how to get this out there to more people. Because right now I'm on a very micro level, right? So to answer your question more specifically, in 5 years, I would like this thing to be reaching more people, obviously. Like I would like to be interviewing. I have this vision of like interviewing like, I don't know, like Ozzie Smith or like somebody like from St. Louis that's of note that like could really launch me into some more interesting, not more interesting, but more conversations that will get me access to more people and more people can hear. So I'd like to basically expand my podcast to answer your question. And then not specifically within this podcast, I obviously have been with Sam for a long time, and we've talked about we'll probably get married down the line. And I personally am still on the fence on whether I want kids or not. A long time I wanted that. I think, you know, I think Sam would probably say she does want that. So I think that'll be a conversation we have down the line. I think it could be a cool thing. I think I could be a cool dad. But yeah, man, like I think I want to keep doing this therapy thing. I think I want to go into private practice and I want to affect people's lives in a similar way that you're talking about. I want to talk to people about things they're going through, and I want to be able to reflect things back to them and help them out. I'm no expert by any means. We're all just people floating on a rock. But yeah, man, I think I don't know if I want to live in St. Louis forever either. That's another thing. But we'll
I'm
see.
back home, bro.
Huh?
I'm back home.
Yeah, man. Does that answer your question, host Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that Sam is awesome.
Yeah.
So she's a wonderful woman, and I think that you're a great guy, and so it seems like a no-brainer to me. Make it happen. Let's go.
Well, for it. Josh, appreciate you coming on, man. I really had a lot of fun talking to you today. We don't do it enough. Hope people enjoyed this.
Yeah, absolutely. Blake, thank you so much for having me on. And if there's anything you need, just holler at me, let me know. This has been super fun, getting able to catch up, talk about some tough things, talk about some fun things, relive some of our past. And yeah, it's been good. We didn't talk about our MCs though. But maybe we can say that for another podcast, or we can talk about it quickly. You just.
What's an MC, Josh?
It is a muscle compliment.
Well, I mean, why are you talking about that?
Yeah, so for a while, me, Blake, and one of our buddies, John, we would keep track of when people would comment about our muscles. So whether they're looking ripped today, or man, you have nice calves, or something like that, we would text each other and say, "Hey, you got a muscle compliment today," and we'd keep track of that. So that was kind of a cool, fun thing that we did for a season of life. But yeah, it was super fun.
Then we gotta be competitive in some way. It's an ongoing battle to be competitive.
Yeah.
Oh, and one last thought, and then for sure I'm ending it. We're gonna talk. So I remember I was thinking about this when we were talking about basketball. I think there's old footage on Facebook.
Yes.
Of us playing basketball against each other. I'm gonna try to dig it up, and I'm gonna post it to promote this episode if I can find it.
Please do. I'll only post it if I'm draining a 3 in your eye.
I don't think there's any footage of that ever happening.
Oh, great.
Josh, all right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, thanks, man. See you.